Chat. Okay, this is story one in my time travel horror stories. As I stepped into the time machine, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The whirling and clicking of the machine made me shiver, as if it were warning me of the dangers that lay ahead. I pressed the button, and the world around me began to warp and distort. Colors bled together, shapes twisted and contorted in a way that made me dizzy. And then, with a sudden jolt, everything stopped. I stepped out of the time machine and looked around, expecting to see a different time and place. But what I saw instead was something far more terrifying. The world was empty and desolate. The sky was a sickly shade of green, and the air smelled of ash and decay. Everything was silent except for the sound of my own breathing. As I began to explore this dark and twisted version of reality, I realized that I wasn't alone. Something was following me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its presence lurking just out of sight. With each passing moment, the world around me grew darker and more twisted. The trees turned into gnarled, twisted things with sharp thorns, and the sky grew darker still. And all the while, the thing that was following me drew closer and closer. I tried to run, but the world seemed to shift and twist around me, making it impossible to find my way. No matter how fast I ran, the thing behind me never seemed to tire. Finally, I stumbled upon a portal that seemed to offer a way out. But as I stepped through it, I realized too late that it was a trap. The portal took me back to the beginning of time, to a place where the very fabric of reality was still forming. And there waiting for me was a thing that had been following me all along. It was a creature made of time itself, with tendrils that stretched out in all directions, and eyes that burned like suns. And it spoke to me in a voice that echoed throughout the sense of my being. "You have disturbed the flow of time," it said. "You have meddled where you should not have, and now you must face the consequences." And with that, the creature reached out and took hold of me, pulling me into the vortex of time and space that was beyond comprehension. I screamed and struggled, but it was no use. I was trapped, lost in an endless abyss of time and horror. And as I felt my mind slipping away, I knew that I had made a mistake that could never be undone. Our next story will also take place in the same universe, but a different character, obviously, messing with time. So let's get to it. I stepped out of the time machine and was greeted by a sight. Okay, let me read. Okay, story 2, The Past. I stepped out of the time machine, and I was greeted by a sight that both thrilled and terrified me. I was standing in the midst of a dense tropical jungle, filled with lush vegetation and strange alien sounds. But as I began to explore this prehistoric paradise, I quickly realized that I was not alone. Something was stalking me, watching my every move from the shadows. At first, I thought it might be a small predator, like a raptor or a velociraptor, but as the rustling grew louder and the growls grew closer, that I was dealing with something more large and dangerous. And then, with a deafening roar, it appeared. It was a Tyrannosaurus Rex, towering over me like a mountain of muscle and bone, its jaws capped wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth that dripped with saliva. I tried to run, but the ground was treacherous, and the jungle was dense. Every step was a struggle as I fought to stay ahead of the relentless predator that was pursuing me. I could feel its hot breath on the back of my neck, and I knew that I was running out of time. I tried to use my knowledge of the future to predict its movements, but the dinosaur was too quick and too powerful. And then, with a sudden burst of speed, it closed in on me. I could feel its massive jaws closing in around me, and I knew that I was done for. But just as I was about to go in its next meal, it was about to happen. A group of smaller dinosaurs, herbivores with their sharp horns and armor plates, charged into the fray, attacking the T-Rex with all their might. The fight was intense, with the dinosaurs locked in a brutal struggle for survival. But in the end, it was the smaller herbivores that emerged victorious, chasing the T-Rex away and leaving me to catch my breath and thank my lucky stars. As I made my way back to the time machine, I knew that I had experienced something truly incredible, but I also knew that I had done and come dangerously close to becoming a permanent resident of this prehistoric world, and that the danger of time travel were far greater than I had ever imagined. Okay, so this was a time travel that did not time travel afterwards, or at least to the past. They learned their lessons when messing with the past. Unlike the last one, which, they found out what happens if you stay too long and messes up. Okay, so our next story will be a little bit different. Let's get on to this story about someone actually from the future living their life in the future, and why it's not always the best to say that you want to live in the future. It had been centuries since the first contact with extraterrestrial life, and humanity had thought it. Okay, scrap. It had been centuries. So, okay, so this next story is about why you shouldn't always wish to go in the future. It had been centuries since the first contact with extraterrestrial life, and humanity had thought it had prepared for everything, that nothing could have prepared them for what was coming. The first wave of aliens were peaceful, eager to share their technology and knowledge with humanity, but as the years passed, a more aggressive and sinister race emerged, intent of using humans as fodder for their twisted experiments, created marine monsters and beasts, twisted and distorted by genetic modification, bred for nothing but destruction and carnage. And they had unleashed these creatures on Earth, using them as weapons, humanity establishing themselves as the rulers of the planet. These monsters were not enough for the alien overlords. They had also created an army of robotic warriors, each one programmed to obey their every command and to eliminate any threat to their power. As I wandered through the desolate wasteland that had once been my home, I knew that I was one of the last survivors. Everywhere I looked, there was monsters and robots hunting down any remaining pocket of resistance and wiping them out with ruthless efficiency. But even as I tried to evade the monsters and robots that hunted me, I knew that something far worse was coming. The aliens had been experimenting with genetic modification for centuries. The rumors had begun to circulate something even more terrible than the beasts that roamed the earth. The aliens had created a monster so powerful and terrible that it could destroy an entire city with a single swipe of its massive claws. It was said to be unstoppable, unkillable, and utterly terrifying. And as I huddled in a ruined building, listening to the sound of the monsters and robots that searched for me, I knew that the monster was coming, and when it arrived, there would be no hope for humanity. I knew then that we would have made a grave mistake, but that we had trusted too much in our own power, and that we have let our arrogance blind us to true nature of the universe. And as the monster approached, I couldn't only pray for somehow, some way humanity might emerge from that horror that awaited us. So yeah, these were the 3 horror stories. That story doesn't really conclude. Yeah. So yeah, now we're gonna interview the story writers. Okay, so our first question: who was the figure made of time? A little bit of the backstory of the time creature. Once upon a time, in a world where time was a physical substance that lived as a figure made entirely of time, this figure was unlikely any other being in the world, for it possessed the power to control time itself. The figure made of time was a curious creature, always wandering the world in search of a new experience. It would move through time and space, never stopping for long in any one place. The figure was a master of time, able to speed it up or slow it down at will. As it wandered the world, the figure made of time. Many other beings, some were mortal creatures, living out their lives in a single limited creatures made of time that possessed great power. Yeah, so they're just the time beings, I guess. One day, as the figure made of time wandered through a dense forest, it came across a group of mortals. The mortals were lost and afraid, unable to find their way out of the woods. The figure took pity on them and decided to help power over time. The figure slowed down time in the forest, the trees, and underbrush grew more slowly, giving the mortals time to find their way out. They were amazed and grateful, and they thanked the figure made of time for itself. After that day, the figure made of time became known throughout the world as a helper and a guide. It uses power over time to assist those in need. My beloved figure made. As the centuries passed, the figure made of time continued to run the world. Countless beings, both mortal and immortal, learned how much about the nature of time and existence, and thus on the move, always wondering. It was never truly alone, for it carried within itself the memories and experiences of all so helped in all those it had encountered, and the figure made of time is a great source of comfort and joy. So, like, the figure will help people if they really need it, but it will also punish them if they mess with it. Okay. Also, there's multiple figures of time, so that's interesting. Could they be connected to the time serpent or whatever from, like, a different story? Probably are creations of it. Okay, the monster that destroyed humanity. Yeah, did it destroy humanity? And then this is, in the distant future, Henry had become a thriving interstellar civilization. They had colonized countless planets and built great cities among the stars. But their success had come at a great cost. They had long since forgotten their homeworld, Earth, and the natural resources that sustained them, and so when a terrible monster appeared, they were caught off guard and able to defend themselves. The monster wasn't like anything that the humans had ever seen. It was a towering behemoth covered in shimmering scales and bristling with deadly spines. It had been created by a race of alien beings and the robotic servants who had been harbored a grudge against the humans for their destructive ways. The monsters were released upon the human colonies, wreaking havoc and destruction. When entire cities were razed to the ground, billions of lives were lost. The humans fought back with all their might, as weapons were no match for the monster, and crowded strength and resilience as the monster continued to rampage. Humans gathered to try and find ways that they knew they had to fight across. Before the monster destroyed what little was left, they searched the ruins of an ancient alien temple where they discovered a powerful weapon. It was a device that could harness the energy of the stars themselves and force a being of incredible power. The humans worked tirelessly to make the weapon, knowing that they could live. Knowing that their lives and the fate of their children depended on its success. Fought ways of aliens and would attackers driven their mission through. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they succeeded. The weapon hummed to life and instead of striking the monster with devastating force, the monster roared in pain and fury. But the humans did not relent. They poured all their energy into the weapon, driving the beam deeper and deeper into the monster's flesh. And then, with the final burst of energy, the monster was vanquished. The humans cheered and celebrated. But they knew that they could never let their guard down again. They had been given a second chance, and they vowed to use it. They would rid their civilization, but this time they would do it right. This would honor their home world and respect the natural resources. They would never forget the lessons they also learned from monsters that nearly destroyed them. So this basically is saying that the humans, this creature is interstellar, and so it was created on Earth, but eventually spread to the audience. So yeah, that character did die, likely, unless they somehow found a way, which I should honestly ask them. Yeah, I'm gonna ask him, did the man find a way off Earth? Did the man find his way off Earth? And then we'll go to questions for the second. Okay, I'm gonna go to the questions for the second story. Okay, so that was for the third story, but this one's for the second story. Having a Tyrannosaurus Rex bite would be extremely unlikely for any human, as the bite force of a T-Rex is to be around 12,800 pounds per square inch psi, which is much greater than that of any living animal today. However, in a fictional story, yes, this is a fictional story, so it makes sense. Anything is possible. Perhaps the dude was lucky enough to avoid any vital organs or arteries during the attack. Or maybe he had some sort of protective gear that helped him withstand the force of the bite. It was possible the T-Rex was distracted or injured in some way, making it twice less powerful than usual. Well, I mean, the T-Rex was kind of distracted by the ceratopsians, which we're about to answer what they were. And it was also could have been a younger individual. I mean, they're probably also wearing protective gear as well because they're a time traveler. I don't know. And then the small herbivore dinosaurs with the horns that scared the T-Rex, they were several species of horned dinosaurs, ceratopsians, that lived during the late Cretaceous period, around the same time as T-Rex. One of the most famous of those is Triceratops, which had 3 horns on its head and bony film that extended back from its skull. Another well-known ceratopsian which had horns and several smaller spikes from the material. So it's likely either a Styracosaurus or Triceratops or a mixed herd of both. These dinosaurs were likely to use their horns. Defense became against predators like tigers by lowering their head and charging. All the predator could use their core to flick edge or even kill the attacker. Additionally, the frill may have some protection for the neck and upper body. Well, it's impossible to know for sure how effective this defense was against a fully grown T-Rex. They didn't say it was fully grown, but like, okay, it's possible the sight of a group of horned dinosaurs charging and it was enough to scare off the predator. Okay, that makes sense. And then let's ask if the man find his way off Earth. Did the man find his way off Earth? Did the man find his way off Earth? Did the man escape? Okay, so there was a man named Jack. So to answer the question, there was a man named Jack who would always dream of exploring space, apparently. He had spent his entire life studying astrophysics for NASA. One day, he had stumbled upon a crashed alien spaceship and managed to repair it. Jack realized that this was the chance for his lifelong dream and decided to take off his alien ship to explore the rest. Traveled through space, Jack encountered all sorts of strange creatures and faced many challenges, but he was determined to continue his journey and explore as much as the universe possible. The group of humans who had been stranded on a distant planet for years after their own spaceship crashed. Together they formed a plan to escape the planet and return to Earth. However, they soon discovered that the giant monster that inherited the planet and preventing any ships from leaving. Jack and his fellow humans worked together to come up with the monster and escape the planet. With their combined skills, they were able to successfully defeat the monster and escape the planet. Return to Earth, the hero, continue to explore the universe. Okay, so that brings more plot questions and answers. Did he have his spaceship all along? How did he suddenly get a spaceship? Who were the other characters? Because where did those crew? Were that the crew that had the gun on that alien planet? I mean, the sword, whatever it was, did they kill it on Earth? I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah. War in space, yeah, I don't know. Does it make sense? I'm assuming that they just found the other crew and then they killed it on Earth. That makes sense. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little story section. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this video. It might make it in the scrapped archives. It might not. This might be a cool edited. No, it's not.